Hey guys, and welcome to the Lazy DC podcast. I'm Dr. Rob Mervenko, and this episode I want to start out by telling you a story, a little bit about my experience with chiropractic, because I think it's a pretty interesting one. There wasn't a doctor ever that I didn't tell this story to that wasn't really wow, you're kidding me. That's what, went on there, But when I started out practicing, like I told you before, I didn't work for anybody else, but I was always an entrepreneur. I had my own businesses ever since I was 12. So it was kind of funny. My unique experience when I got out of school was actually working for myself, and I was a little bit nervous. Well, anyway, I went into this office and I would go over and get adjusted by this chiropractor that was very close to my wife's office. My wife is also a chiropractor, and she was one town over. Well, I got out of school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. We were talking about me actually working, with her. I didn't want to work for anybody else, although, working for your wife, that's a whole nother story. But I was, looking at it and I was saying, okay, what do I want to do? Well, we would go over and we'd get adjusted at this chiropractor's office, and he had been there for over 50 years. He was one of the first chiropractors in the state. So for me, it was pretty cool because I like that kind of stuff. That's the stuff just interests me. Wow, here's this guy who's been practicing chiropractic for over 50 years. I just want to be in the same room with this guy. Well, anyway, I would go over there and get adjusted, and, he'd give me an adjustment, and I would leave, and I would pick his brain about something, each time I went over there. Well, one day I went over, and there's a sign in the window that says, "Doctor Sick." And I was just like, wow. What do I do? The doctor's sick. I wonder what happened. So I went around to get in my car, and his wife came out the door and said, Dr. Rob, please come up. The doctor wants an adjustment. And I'm thinking, the doctor wants an adjustment. What is she talking about? The doctor's up in bed, and he needs an adjustment. Can you come up and adjust him? And I was just scared to death. Here, I just got out of school. I haven't really adjusted many people, and here this chiropractor that has been doing chiropractic for 50 years, one of the first chiropractors in the state, is asking me for an adjustment. Well, my palms, started to sweat profusely, so I walked in the kitchen, and she's guiding me upstairs into this house, and I get into the bedroom, and here's this doctor. He's laying in bed, and he's in his underwear and t-shirt, and he's like, "Hey, Dr. Rob, I need an adjustment. Come over here, give me an adjustment." And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? So he's telling me, my massage joint's out, and he's explaining to me, pointing to this, pointing to that, and he's getting himself positioned on the side of the bed. Well, I walk up to the side of the bed, and here's this thing. It's like a big marshmallow. I mean, this bed is sinking way down, and so I got over top of him, and I'm laying on top of him. My hands are sweating, and I'm sure he was thinking who is this kid, So I jumped up, and I did my best to adjust his back. Well, I passed the test because he said, "Thank you, that was a great adjustment." And I swear my hands were shaking, and I go to walk out of the bedroom, and he says to me, "Do you want to go down and see some patients?" And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, why don't you go down and open up today?" And I was like, all right. So I went down and I took the Dr. Sick sign off the door, and I sat at his desk, and I started to see patients. And that's how I started in practice. It was pretty exciting. People would just walk in the door, and I said, "Hey, I'm here. My name's Dr. Rob." They said, "Hey, where's the doctor?" And I said, "Well, he's not here today. He's sick." And okay. And they came back, and I treated them, and that's how it all started there at that office. Well, I think it's a really unique story because, like I say, it's chiropractic takes you way back. This is one of the first chiropractors in the state of Maryland. I mean, I guess we're talking about the year was probably the 50s or something like that, early 50s, that this chiropractor started out there. And but it was pretty exciting to follow in his footsteps. I tell you, it was really, really neat to be able to have that experience, and I'm thankful for it because it's a really unique experience. I mean, I was able to get my hands on 40 people a day. adjusting and caring for 40, 50, 60 people a day right from the beginning. And not many people have that opportunity to do that. So I was very fortunate. And he was a great doctor. I mean, I can't tell you how many people would come in and just, they love this guy. And I think, one of the reasons why, and this is something that you guys can kind of take from this, is he really loved what he was doing. He had a passion for helping people. And when you have a passion for helping people, people love you, so that's something as far as I think is a good takeaway, from that story. Now, he didn't do anything for new patients. And I want to talk to you today about new patients. Well, he did nothing for new patients. It was actually funny because I said to him one day, when I was going over and kind of shadowing him and getting adjusted and stuff, I said to him one day, I said, "Hey, Doc," I said, do you send out any postcards or, do you do any mailers? Have you ever done any kind of insert in the newspaper? And he gave me this look like, what the hell are you talking about? I mean, he literally was just like this blank stare, and he didn't do anything for new patients. It was all word of mouth. Well, if you're somewhere for 50 years and you're doing right by people and people are loving what you do, well, that's why he had people that would come to him, on a consistent basis. I mean, people would drive literally. I had some people coming 3 hours to see me, and I'm not even kidding. But people came from all over to see him because he was there for a long time and he cared for people and people got good results. Now, in that situation, it was a lot of pain relief. And there may be some doctors listening now that does pain relief. And if that's what you do, that's great because chiropractic helps with pain. It really does. In my situation, I wanted to do a little bit more than that. I mean, I really got jazzed up about seeing patients and saying, "Hey, Bob, how you feeling today?" "Hey, I'm doing great, Dr. Rob. I'm here just for my adjustment." And I would go ahead and feel their spine and make sure everything's in line. I'd do their adjustment, say, "Hey, I'll see you, on your next visit." And that to me was exciting because I knew I was keeping a person well. Well, that's just my opinion. Everybody has different opinions about that stuff. And we're going to get into some of that stuff. I'm going to have some people on the show that have, very opposite ideas about chiropractic and things like that. But one thing that I always did, when I was practicing and even now, I would always kind of consider like that person's viewpoint and at least, have some open mind, about what it is that they feel chiropractic is. It's funny in my town, I did what I did and I would go visit chiropractors that, would actually practice the box on the wall, meaning, whatever a person wants to pay that day, that pop their payment into the box. So I had friends that did that and they enjoyed practicing like that. And I, sat down and I talked to them about their reasoning behind that. And I can kind of see, why they would do something like that. It's not how I practice, but I could kind of see, their reasons behind it. And I really didn't have anything on it. It didn't bother me. Some people do. Some of you guys listening may be thinking like, oh, that's not the way to practice. And there's a lot of reasons why they shouldn't practice like that. But for me personally, I just looked at it and I said, hey, we're all chiropractors here. We're all helping people. And, every chiropractor is my friend. I would always, want to have good relationships with chiropractors. And sometimes I would go in chiropractor's office to visit and I wouldn't get that warm, fuzzy feeling from them for whatever reason. I don't know why. But my theory is there's so many, there's so little number of us, we should all support each other. So I would always support chiropractors no matter what they did. I don't care how they practiced, really. But again, we're talking about new patients here today. And, this office that I went into, and it was, an eye-opener for me, this office that we're taking over and this little kind of role model thing that we're using on the podcast. And remember, I told you when I went in there, patients weren't being scheduled. They weren't being advanced multiple scheduled. So right away, I got that in. The next thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to look at, okay, how are patients finding us? So the biggest source that this practice had was internet. So we had a lot of people that were finding us on Google. So you know what I did? I went right in on that and I found out, okay, what's working? Who is a part of this working formula? And let me beef that up a little bit. So I did that. I also started to make some phone calls calls out. So, or my staff started to make some phone calls out. Like I told you, if a patient hadn't been in my practice 3 months or greater, they're getting a phone call from me. So that's something that you can do right away. If you're on your way to work now today, go in and tell your receptionist, hey, we're going to start calling people that haven't been in our practice 3 months or greater, and we're going to make 15 to 20 calls out every day. So in my office, that's what we do. We do a lot of calls out because it's really important for people to hear about us. Think about it. If somebody has a reason to use you and they are looking for a chiropractor, who is going to pop in their mind but the person who last reached out to them? So if that's your patient, I always considered it as my patient, and I would always have to stay in touch with them in some way or another. So that's really important to make those recalls. So what I did in this new office that we're taking over is I established, okay, how are these patients finding us? Well, the web was one thing, so I wanted to put some attention on that. Phone calls out was another thing, so I wanted to put some attention on that. And then the other thing was Facebook ads. I got these started right away. Facebook ads are something as far as it's an offer you can throw out there right away, and people in your area that have the income you're looking for, that have the things as far as whatever you choose in Facebook targeting, you can look for that person and you can show an ad to them, and the ad can be whatever you want to make of it. So it's one of those situations where it's a great way to get patients in the office. So these are people, think about it, people, the great thing about chiropractic, this is another thing that I think is awesome, and it's good, for us as business owners, because if you went into a room of 50 people, I would bet you that you're going to find 35 of those 50 people, maybe a little bit more, but at least 35 of those 50 people need our services. And the way I look at that, that's great for our business, because, you can go out to a fair and start interviewing people and just ask them questions. How's your neck and back? And people are going, oh God, my shoulders ache, my back hurts, boom, there's a patient. Every once in a while, maybe, 1 or 2 out of 10 people will say, oh, I've never had back pain before, ever in my life. Those are few and far between. I know I'm kind of jealous of those people because I've always had discomfort in my back. That's probably why I'm a chiropractor, because I started out very early on in my life having back pain, and I saw a chiropractor for it, and it helped me. So a lot of people in the population have neck and back pain. So Facebook is great. Your ad goes up in this feed, and people are scrolling through it, and they're looking, and they're saying, oh, wow, this sounds like something that might be good for me. And they go ahead and click on it, and your office gets a message that they want an appointment, and then your office staff is trained to call that appointment and get them in on your schedule. So those are the main things. I'm trying to think if there's anything else right now that we're doing. Those are the main things. But I'm always, I'm from the camp that I want to do everything I possibly can. I was, talking to, now in this office too, guys, we have a marketer. That is their position. If you go onto my website, you'll see there's some courses on there. One of the courses is on how to hire and train a marketer. And I think this is a position that in order to grow, you really should think about having, because this person, their sole responsibility is to get new patients in your office. So in both of my offices, the new one and the older one that I still manage from afar, is they have full-time marketers in there. So their position is to get new patients in the door. So we have that too as well. So he will go out in this new office, he will go out to places like gyms, health fairs, things like that. And he just educates the population, tells them about, the consultation that we are offering and things like that. And he gets new patients in. So, that first week that I got in there, this new office, I'm sitting out front, as I told you, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to go in and I got to start this ball rolling, and I don't know what I'm going to experience here. And I went in, and there was, 12 people on the book, nobody scheduled next week. It was kind of scary feeling. So I got all that stuff in. I started looking at the marketing. I started looking at the Facebook ads, getting that out there. And I think we saw like maybe 13 new patients the first week. So that was really, really great, because then, now we started looking at the other things that we needed to do in order to be successful. So my theory is always this: let's take a look at first that new patient, how we're going to get them in the door. And then the next thing is looking at your procedures of how you're going to get that patient to start care. And that's when we go into education. And I'm going to go into that a little bit with you next week. I know there's all different kinds of ideas and ways that we all think is the appropriate way of educating a patient. So I don't want to get into those things that, maybe aren't something that you can use in your practice, because I know every doctor is different. But education, I would say that everyone, would agree with me that it's very, very important. One of the doctors that I am consulting now on a one-on-one basis, this guy is man, he's on fire. He's been practicing a long time. We discovered and rekindled his passion, and he's educating his patients. And I'm telling you, every week he goes up 10, 15 patient visits. The problem we're having now is space. And that's always a great problem when you get that, in your practice, where you say, hey, I really can't see any more patients because I really don't have the space. So that's the kind of problems that we want to have in our practices. And this podcast is really dedicated to helping you have those kinds of problems in your practice where you're running out of space. I also want to make sure that you visit our website. It's www.thelazydc.com. Now, there's all kinds of information there, but one thing I want you to pay close attention to are the courses that I speak about. These courses are amazing. They're things that I used in my practice, and I put them in a way that really takes the work away from you. It's something that you can sit somebody down in front of, and they can get the product from the course, and this is extremely important. I talk a lot about this, and actually, this is a great idea for an upcoming show, is I want to talk to the doctors about letting go. When I consult somebody, I'll call them and I'll say, well, who's calling the patients? And they'll say, well, I do. And I say, well, if somebody comes up, who schedules the patient? The doctor, well, I do. Well, what do you have a staff person there for if you're doing everything? I mean, really? So it's important that you give those people the opportunity to perform for you. And I think a lot of times people go wrong, and they don't give these people that they employ the opportunity to perform, and the person isn't going to be with you long. They really aren't, because people want to do well. They want to produce something, and you have to let them. So I'm going to go into that in an upcoming podcast, because that's something I think is very important. I'm Dr. Rob Mervenko, and I look forward to seeing you in some upcoming podcasts. I have some great information about growing your practice here, and I also want to keep you up to date on the office that we took over, because there's a lot of things there that I'm going to share with you, some learning experiences that I'll share with you that'll help you in your practice. So I will see you on the next show. You guys have a great week.